Start to record. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
And we're live here on Facebook. Like to welcome those listening in podcast land, and also like to welcome my buddy Rich. Rich, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good, Mike. We also can't forget about the folks that watch us over on the YouTube as well. So welcome to those viewers watching us at a later date. So, Mike, yeah, it was a pretty good week. A little bit colder. We got some snow this week. Probably nowhere near as much snow on the ground here as that you got up north.
Well,
where you're at.
We're in the process of getting 5 more inches today. So,
ouch.
At some point, it's just snow, and you just dig it out and you start again. It's no big deal at this point.
Yeah, as long as the roads get cleared, that's what matters.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sidewalks.
So yeah, not
to the house.
Yeah, and sidewalks. Yeah, but really not much is going on. Mike, you were telling me pre-show you had a little bit of an update with the fish tanks behind you. What's going on with those?
So this fish tank here. Remember I told you we had those tiny little pea puffers, and they were super tiny.
Sure.
Well, pea puffers tend to be very territorial, and one of them in here was a jerk and killed everybody else in there. So he's been moved to that tank there. And then
so he's all by himself.
He is all by himself because he killed everybody and he can't be trusted with anybody else around him. And then in here we have some panda cories that are a little bit bigger. You'll probably see them swimming around there. There they go now. You can see them.
Yeah.
And they'll swim around and they're fun. They'll go away eventually, as they are already promised to a friend of the show, Nick Rice. And we'll get those to him. And then when he takes those, we're doing a trade, and I'm going to get some guppies in here. And this tank is going to go off. We're going to put tons of guppies in here, and we're going to get some more. We'll plan it a little bit more, and we'll do some fun here, and we'll just have a good old time.
All right. Cool. All right, Mike. Well, not a lot of things on the docket, so we're going to on the rundown today, just talking the NFL, as we a lot of playoff football that happened last week, and we got conference championship games this week.
Yep. My wife is so happy. There's only three more football games she has to watch this year.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you're not going to watch the minor league football, or alternative football like your USFL or your XFL.
So those are background noise.
Oh, okay.
And NASCAR comes before those.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Is she okay with how does your wife feel about NASCAR? Does she?
We'll get into that later. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's get it. Let's give everybody. Let everybody know what we're talking about this week, and then we'll get into it when we get into other parts of the show.
What else we got going on this week, Mike?
So you took on the NFL. We also have NBA and NHL. We were going to try to do it last week, but this week is going to be a great time to do it. We're going to get into what's going on and where the NHL and NBA are, as well as our first NASCAR corner, I guess second NASCAR corner of this new year. And a lot of talk about, kind of give you a timeline of how we'll see things play out in the next few weeks, to give you some previews, and then we'll talk. We're hopefully going to have a fantasy, but NASCAR waits to the last minute to put it up. So all that and more. But Rich, what should I do now?
Mike, why don't you go ahead and run that intro?
Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa, this is Balls and Sticks, the podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Rich.
And we're back. Okay, Rich. So, before we get into any of the sports things, we have to talk poll questions. You have some big news about to happen, but let's first give results of this week's poll question. We went with Jock Jams. Rich, which 2 Jock Jam Stadium songs did you pick for this week's poll?
Well, Mike, we did a Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss and Twist and Shout by the Beatles.
Yeah. So We had a really close vote. One vote separates it. We had 6 votes. And as it turned, or we had 5 votes. I'm sorry, 5 votes. As it turns out, Twist and Shout wins. You, me, and Mr. Ron Lehmans. Thank you for voting for Twist and Shout this week. And we'd like to thank fans of the show Greg Sackerson and Mark Hendricks, both for voting in this week's poll question. Rock and Roll All Night failed, but you showed up for it. I love both of those songs, but the Beatles win out every time for me.
Yeah, it seems like with Twist and Shout, whether it's the Beatles or another group covering the song, it seems like there's more interaction that you can do with the song rather than Rock and Roll All Night. So that's why I went with Twist and Shout.
Okay, so this week's poll question, Rich, what's it going to be, and what's the first song have to do with the big news this week?
Yeah, so Mike, this is going to be final first round. We're finally going to close the book on the first round, and we'll start second round. I'm going to probably find a way to group all the songs that have won so far into it. So it's a fitting thing of like kind of when I paired these two songs together, it's kind of like maybe when it's getting close to the game ending, whether you're down with Final Countdown or whether you're on the winning side and the game is just about over, Final Countdown, or if you're on the losing side and you need something to rally the troops, Lose Yourself in the moment.
Okay. So Lose Yourself by Eminem.
Yeah. And Final Countdown.
Yeah. And who did Final Countdown? I should know this. Europe. That's right.
Yeah. So final first round, and because we normally start our second season around the NASCAR, and but more on that later. So.
Yep.
All right, Mike, so you're ready to talk some football as we had our divisional round playoff game. So we got a little bit more time that we can talk kind of maybe about each game and the outcome, how we picked it.
Yep.
So let's just start with the first game of that weekend, which was the Saturday afternoon game between the Chiefs and the Jaguars, which the Chiefs won 27-20.
We
both picked the Chiefs.
More importantly, though, in that game, Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain, looked really bad, looked very similar to another injury that happened last week. We'll talk about that when we get to the final game of the week, about that other injury. But by the way, I'm saying they are lucky they played Saturday night. That extra day to get that ankle back right is what's going to help them if they have any chance to win this week. It was scary seeing him leave the field. He was not happy about it, but he couldn't plant at all after coming back in the game. That's what I noticed.
You got to give hats off to the Chiefs organization for forcing him to go to the locker room and get thoroughly checked out instead of going into the tent, having it quickly looked at, and going back out there. Because they told him, no, you're not going to go back into the game unless you go to the locker room to have this looked at.
Yeah, that's the right move to do. That's a team looking out. This is a guy earning $500 million in his life. You have guaranteed, not guaranteed, but you have agreed to pay this man $500 million. You want to make sure this investment's going to last longer than a year or two.
Exactly. Possibly 2 more games that could may or may not result in the Super Bowl title. Isn't worth him being out the entire next season or half a season while he's trying to get his ankle back right.
Yeah, totally agree.
I'm glad they took that move and made sure that, all right, yeah, it's something you can play on. Are you comfortable playing on it? Yes, we're comfortable letting you play on it. Yep, let's go back out and see. Let's go out, get you back in the game to see how you can help us win the game.
I totally agree with
overall, it was a close game, though. The Jaguars could have pulled out another come from behind victory behind Lawrence and Doug Peterson.
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Mahomes is out and not playing at 100%. But the Chiefs did everything they needed to do and only did what they needed to do in that game, closing it out with a nice win. Then we move to the Giants-Eagles. You and I both picked the Eagles. Well, that seemed like the pick as the Eagles won 38-7. A 31-point victory on behalf of those Eagles. That is amazing. Huge.
Yeah, I really can't put too much on this game because I didn't watch this game. I really didn't have as much interest in this game, mostly because I think I knew in my mind who was probably going to win this game before it kicked off. So, and the wife didn't want to watch football anymore. So I think we were watching a movie or we streamed something instead of, I was sort of following the score along on my phone periodically, checking in on the score.
This is the one game that I did not watch this week. My wife allowed me to watch every other game, and this one game that we missed, totally worth not watching. So I have nothing. I too have nothing for this game, as it's the one game I just didn't care about. So.
All right, Mike. So Sunday's matchup started off with the Bills and the Bengals. The Bengals won 27-10. I kind of viewed this game as kind of like a coin flip, where it could have gone either way. So I was really surprised to see how big of a difference there was between the Bengals and the Bills and how big of a victory the Bengals got out of this. I mean, you were thinking that it's snowing. That it's cold, it was snowing, that would play into Buffalo's hands a little bit more. But that Bengals defense just had a plan, and they executed it really well.
Yeah. It was good to see the Bengals doing Bengals thing, doing what they wanted to do, not in a way that looks like the good old Bungles from our youth. Man, are you jumping on the Joe Burrow bandwagon?
I kind of am. I mean, I know I say it on air, but before off air, or just thinking to myself, I was almost thinking that, right, whoever wins this matchup, they're winning the Super Bowl.
That's not a bad guess. But again, we were sitting
because
here.
Josh Allen was playing so well. There were the concerns over the turnovers, and that happened again. The turnovers happened again in that game.
And what did I say last week when we were talking about the week prior's things? I said he cannot continue to have this because the teams that are left in the playoffs are not going to let him get by with turning over the ball. He turned over the ball. And the Bengals pounced. They did what they needed to do. So I am 100% on board. Like, that was awesome. And you know what? I picked the Bills. I wanted to see Josh Allen do something. I thought it would have been even more fun to see the Cowboys-Bills in the Super Bowl just as a retro 90s feel. Watching the Cowboys win, only this time I don't think the Cowboys would have won. I think the Bills would have been the better team in that matchup, but we won't know. As
right. Speaking of those, go on, finish it up, Mike.
As the Bills lose, as you said earlier, the Bills go down 27-10 in favor of the Bengals. Man, great game.
So go ahead and give us the rundown of what happened in the final fourth. The matchup.
Last game of the week last week, we watched the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers duking. This was a solid blow-for-blow heavyweight battle of two teams that really did prove that they deserved to be there, as we saw the 49ers win 19-12 over the Cowboys. The big news out of that one was running back Christian
McCaffrey.
No, Ponder. broke his ankle or had a very similar injury to. It looked like what happened to I didn't mean Christian Pollard for the Cowboys. Broke his ankle.
Tony Pollard. Yeah, Tony Pollard.
Broke his ankle in what looked like a very similar incident to Patrick Mahomes. A man fully landed on his ankle, and rather than his ankle, a high ankle sprain, which is a tear in or a bruise, an extreme bruising of the membrane around the shin bone, he broke his actual shin bone. So what we were told was a high ankle sprain turned out to be, initially that was the initial diagnosis, turned out to be a broken leg. And honestly, if he doesn't break his ankle there or his leg there, I believe we see the Cowboys using him the way he could move and the way that he was doing things. I totally see him winning. The Cowboys could have won that game. They could have gotten at least one more touchdown, if not two, to win the game. And so, Rich, did you get to watch that game?
I didn't watch that game either.
Okay. I got to watch both of the Sunday games, and my wife was awesome about it. Let us watch both of them, and she wanted to go to bed, and it was like within the 2-minute warning, and she was like, "Oh," and so I finished the game and then joined her in bed. She was fine with it, but okay. So, good games. I think great games all weekend, except for that Eagles-Giants game, which, again, neither one of us watched. So, okay. This week, we are moving on to the conference championships. Rich, game number 1, tomorrow, 49ers, Eagles. Is that a 2 p.m. start again?
I think, they start that at 2 p.m.
So go to church.
Mid-afternoon. They're in that mid-afternoon window.
Yeah.
But, I mean, really, for both of these matchups, I would not be surprised at any combination of the two Super Bowl teams making it.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with no matter what the matchup is. With the 49ers and the Eagles, I don't think either of these teams have gone up against a defense like they're going to face.
Yeah.
This week. Neither team has.
I truly do agree with you that I feel like the AFC champion, whoever wins the AFC championship, has a defense that we'll never see again. Rich, I kind of am on this Brock Purdy bandwagon.
Have you finally come around to Brock Purdy being legit?
I think he might be legit now,
or at least legit within the scheme that they've created over these last 7 games. Now he's on a 7-game winning streak, or is it an 8-game winning streak now?
I think it's 7. It might be 8. I don't remember.
But if anything, I think this could be his toughest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100% going to be. But you know what? I think I'm going with the Niners in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Niners too because of the pre-postseason pick of the Niners making it to the Super Bowl. But the way the Eagles came out and just manhandled the Giants of jumping out early, that's going to be the key to success for them again this week.
Yep.
Because you really haven't seen the Brock Purdy offense play from behind. They've always either kept it blow for blow and kept it a close game where they're not asking too much of Brock Purdy. So it's really going to be a better matchup with that the 49ers, they're going to need to keep the game close so that they can play within the confines of their offense and not have to feel like they have to catch up and make up and bridge that 14 or 21 point up that the just close.
Yeah. you know, I think it's going to be a great matchup either way. I think Brock Purdy. I agree. Brock Purdy has to bring his team out early, and I think this is going to be a pretty high scoring game. So, Rich, the second game starting at 5:30 Central Time. That's where most of our fans are. We're going to see that be the Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Who you got in this game, Rich?
I'm going to go with the team that I like out of these two, and it's going to have to be Joe Burrow and the Bengals. They have, for whatever reason, they have the Chiefs' number, and if they can bring that same type of defense intensity that they brought against Josh Allen and the Bills, with Patrick Mahomes having limited mobility than what he's used to, the Chiefs could have to figure out a way to combat that as well. So if they can figure out a way to bring that same defensive intensity and scheme into Kansas City, I like the Bengals.
Yep. You know what? It's hard to go against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. But how can you go against Patrick Mahomes, who is currently the best quarterback we've seen playing right now? By the way, I will also say I still think Josh Allen is a better quarterback. He might have been beaten last week, and he might have shown some weakness. But I don't think the weakness was 100% all Josh Allen. Yes, he needs to work on his decision making, but I can't say that he's better, that Joe Burrow is better than him in overall skill. So I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs because you never know what Patrick Mahomes is going to come out and do something to you. So
yeah, it eventually they got to get. Third time's a charm, if anything. Third time could be the charm for them to finally beat the Bengals.
Yeah.
Because those victories have been narrow victories, narrow come from behind victories. So I think we're going to probably see a close game.
Yep.
A close game. I don't know if it's going to be a close, high-scoring game or if it'll just be a close game, and it could just come down to who has the ball last.
Totally agree. Okay, what's next? Anything else in the NFL that you want to talk about?
Well, we had a head coach get hired.
We did.
As the Panthers hired Frank Reich, the disposed coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
I have a hard time with this pick, mostly because I think the reason the pick was made is wrong. I feel that the reason the pick was made has more to do with the fact that he was the first person to throw a touchdown in a Carolina Panthers jersey ever.
Okay.
I think it's more that loyalty than it is making the right pick for the right job.
Well, this ownership group and front office group was not even in the picture at all when Reich was quarterbacking the expansion Panthers, and he only played 3 games, so it isn't like he played the entire season.
I get it
in that inaugural season.
But the hard part for me is I'm going to compare it to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
The St. Louis Cardinals have a history of promoting former players to the skipper position, to positions that they might not be qualified for, and letting those guys run. The Cubs are doing it right now. And sometimes it's within the same ownership, sometimes it's not. But is that always the right move, or is it just a fan service that probably isn't even that good of a move for him?
Yeah, the Frank Reich hiring kind of confused me a little bit too. I mean, it sounds like the analysis that I read around the hiring was that for whatever reason, the the team that made the decision to go with Reich over the interim coach of Steve Wilkes was that they wanted somebody that had a good plan or had an offensive background.
Okay.
Steve Wilkes comes from the defense side of the ball. But I think with how, being granted, it was still a losing record for the team, but it was night and day between how they played with Wilkes as head coach versus how they played before they had to let go of Matt Rule.
Yeah.
So I think that I still think that I think I would have rather seen them stick with Wilkes.
Yep.
Even if it was maybe a shorter term deal, that all right, let's see if it's not a fluke and see how you do. But maybe they also didn't want, because most of the time an interim head coach really doesn't see much success when they get the full-time job. So maybe they just didn't want the negative backlash if they only gave him 1 year to see if he could translate what he did as the interim head coach to the permanent job.
Yep.
And maybe they didn't want that backlash if it didn't work out and they fired him.
Yeah.
And they let him go after 1 year.
In other news, now all of a sudden New Jersey might be a landing spot for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett hired as the offensive coordinator for the Giants.
I don't actually believe that in the statement that I made.
Jets,
I don't think that that just because Nathaniel Hackett goes somewhere that means that it is a landing spot for Aaron Rodgers. It could be.
How'd that work? Exactly. How'd that wind up for the Denver Broncos?
But yeah, I totally agree. It's not a guarantee, and obviously it's not a guarantee. And B, I don't even think that there's a real indication that that's what's going on. Like, to me, what seems more likely is that he's more happy to not have Nathaniel Hackett around. Follow me here.
Okay.
He was ready to leave that team at the end of last season, right?
Yeah.
That's what the indication was. So then Nathaniel Hackett leaves, and all of a sudden he's happy to sign a 3 or 5 year deal. I don't remember what the deal is.
I think it was a 3-year deal, but money does talk, Mike. Money does talk.
But he was But if you are so unhappy that you're ready to leave a team over it after at point X, are you going? Is money going to be the only factor that keeps you around? Knowing that he probably could have made that type of money just about anywhere else he went. I think, reading between the lines, I think Nathaniel Hackett is probably the real issue, was one of the big issues that he had. He's gone. He's happy again. Hopefully. I mean, I don't want to see him back in Green Bay, but you know what? If he's back, he didn't do great this year. We'll see. I'm not that worried about it. So that's all I have for NFL talk. Rich, do you have anything else before we move on to the NBA?
No, let's go ahead and go to the NBA. So Mike, go ahead and bring up the standings.
Yep.
And I mean, now it just seems like with the NBA, it almost seems like everybody makes the playoffs.
I mean, almost everybody.
With them having a play-in tournament or them actually clinching based off of their record or winning their division. So, Mike,
as of right now, there are if the playoffs started today, there are three teams that make the playoffs that are under 500.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I like the concept of a play-in tournament, kind of bringing that March Madness feel into it, saying that, all right, maybe it's where maybe you have less, brings more importance to the regular season for those teams that probably shouldn't be in the playoffs, but making the game more interesting, making the overall season more interesting. So, Mike, I'm going to give you the teams that we jointly picked as making the playoffs, and then you tell me whether they're in the playoffs or not.
Okay. And we
So,
went all
and
the
you
way
can
down
also
to 10.
differentiate whether they're in that range that they're in that play-in tournament, which
Okay.
I think is 8 through 10.
7 through 10.
So, Mike, the Philadelphia 76ers.
The 76ers are in.
The Milwaukee Bucks.
By the way, 76ers second place in the East. The Bucks
Okay.
are in third place in the East, and they are in.
All right, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
They're in fifth place and would be in.
All right, the Miami Heat.
They are in sixth place, just in the full tournament, just outside of having to play in.
All right, and the last team that we agreed on, the Boston Celtics.
Number one, and they are in.
All right, and the last team that we agreed on was the Nets.
The Brooklyn Nets are in fourth. So we picked the top six, as we both agreed that those top six would make the playoffs. Rich.
All right, Mike. So here are the two teams that we disagreed on and picked differently, Mike.
Okay.
So your first team that you put into the playoffs that I didn't was the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, they are in second to last in the Eastern Conference, way outside, as they are 21 games back from first place, but looks like 10 games back from making the playoffs. The play-in.
All right. Gotcha. And the next on your other team that you listed differently was the Atlanta Hawks.
The Atlanta Hawks are in the play-in tournament at number 8.
All right. So my two teams that we differed on, the Chicago Bulls.
They are tiebreaker behind the Wizards for making the play-in tournament.
Gotcha. And I put the Raptors into the playoffs.
They are one game behind the Bulls and the Wizards out of the playoff tournament.
Gotcha. All right, Mike, going over to the Western Conference.
Yep.
The LA Clippers.
The LA Clippers are in fifth place in the
Okay. The Memphis Grizzlies.
Memphis Grizzlies are at number 2 and in.
Dallas Mavericks.
The Dallas Mavericks are in sixth place, just above, a half game up in the playoffs.
Okay. The Denver Nuggets.
The Denver Nuggets are in first place, definitely in.
All right. The Phoenix Suns.
The Phoenix Suns are in ninth place in the playoff tournament.
And the final team that we agreed on was the Golden State Warriors.
They're in seventh place, also in the playoffs, or in the
I'm sorry, Mike.
the play.
Yeah, okay. And the Timberwolves.
They're in eighth place in the playoff or in the play-in tournament.
Okay. All right, Mike. So we only disagreed on one team in the Western Conference. Your team that you put in the different than my list was the New Orleans Pelicans.
They are in fourth place and would be in the tournament.
And I gave the benefit of the doubt that LeBron and the Lakers would find a way to make the playoffs somehow.
Well, they are currently third to last and out of the tournament.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, Mike. So the other NBA news, the All-Star break is February 19th out in Utah, and they have announced the All-Star Game starters.
Yeah.
So those All-Star Game starters, I don't think there are really too many surprises here. Your West starters, Steph Curry and Luka Doncic in the backcourt. In the front court is Nikola Jokic, Zion Williamson, kind of a surprise pick, I think, supposedly based on how many games he's played and with injuries. But when he's played, he's been really good.
Yep.
And because it's a fan vote, LeBron James as the captain.
I don't think that's just a fan vote thing. I really don't, by the way. I think, and I'll say it, I think LeBron is averaging 38 a night. At 38. So the first 2 weeks of the season, he didn't look great. But since those first 2 weeks, he has been averaging 38 a game. Now, he's 38 years old, averaging 38 points a game. He is making it harder to argue that he's not in the top 2 or 3, easily 2 or 3, I would say. But there are some I have arguments against him being the greatest of all time. I do.
Yep. And we've discussed that. I don't know. I'm sure if you listen to our shows enough, go back into the archive and find it on the podcast side. You can probably find the episode where we talked about greatest of all time, or our all-time NBA team, where we put together 12 stars throughout the whole entire history of the game.
Yep.
We both put and where we ranked them.
In the East, your backcourt is Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Your front court, Devin Mitchell and Jason Tatum. And your captain, Giannis Antetokounmpo. You just gave me the Giannis one. No, I think
no. I was fully right. Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that's how you say it.
No, either way, I think all of these guys deserve to be there. Now I don't remember. This is how it voted out. But don't they then pick teams?
They do. The reserves get voted on. I think it's a combination of media and the coaches pick the reserves.
Okay.
And I think the only wrinkle that they're doing for this year is that the team's going to be selected an hour before the game, and it's going to be live.
I like it.
It isn't going to be taped.
I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. Let's move on to the NHL, as we haven't talked about hockey much, and I have enough snow that I could, crush into a hockey rink if I wanted to up here. We're going to start with the Eastern Conference. Rich, are you ready?
My mouse died, so I need to bring up the predictions workbook on the phone here real quick.
Okay.
So the NHL. So the NHL, we really only picked who we thought the division winners would be. Not
okay, that's fine.
But I think the link that I gave you tells you.
Yep.
It does kind of list like the.
Yeah, but it also
division winners in there, and also who makes the playoffs as well.
So who do you got?
All right, Mike. So in the Atlantic, you picked the Lightning, and I picked the Panthers.
So the Lightning are in, as they are third place in the Atlantic currently, and the Panthers are they're behind a few games or a few points.
Okay.
So they are they're not they don't even make the wild card.
All right, in the Metropolitan Division, we both went with the Hurricanes.
And they are number one in the Metropolitan. Let's move to the Central.
Where are they at in the Metropolitan, Mike?
They're number one. I said that.
Number one. I'm sorry. Okay. And the Central Division, we both went with the Avalanche.
The Avalanche are 2 points. And again, hockey does it differently. They do a point system, but they are 2 points out of the wild card.
All right. And finally, this Pacific, we kind of both went with kind of new teams that I don't think we've ever picked before. Went with the Flames, and I went with the Oilers.
They are both the wild card teams currently.
Ooh. All right, Mike. So just a quick rundown. Who are the current division leaders?
You have the
and
Boston.
Who are your playoff? Let's go with who are the current playoff teams if the season ended today in both conferences.
In the Atlantic, Boston leads the Atlantic, followed by the Maple Leafs and Tampa Bay Lightning. In the Metropolitan, Carolina, as we picked, is winning the Metropolitan, followed by the Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. Your two wildcards teams currently would be the Capitals and the Penguins.
All right.
In the West, the Central Division would have the Dallas Stars, the Winnipeg Jets, the Minnesota Wild are your top three teams making the playoffs as of right now. In the Pacific, you have the Los Angeles Kings, the Seattle Kraken, and the Vegas Golden Knights. Your two wildcard teams, like we just said, would be the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flame.
All right, Mike. Now, it seems like right now on the show we have a love-hate relationship
Oh,
with
I hate
the
them.
Chicago Blackhawks.
Nope, I just hate them. Nope.
Okay.
I got no love for them. And they are in last place, and that's where they deserve to be until they sell the team and they make amends for what they did to that young man. Period. You knew you were going to get me on this.
I know. I mean, personally, I don't think because it's more of a family ownership of that that the organization has been in that family. I think the closest thing you're going to get to a sale would be the current chairman or the controlling person stepping down and somebody else in the family stepping into that leadership role.
Yeah, and that's probably the best we're ever going to get, but I can't stand it anymore. The Blackhawks, if you don't know, Rich brought it up, so I'm gonna explain it. If you don't know why I hate the Blackhawks, they had their video coordinating coach, or their video coach, was raping a player, and they let him stay on the team. They won the Stanley Cup, and they defaced the Stanley Cup by putting this man's name on the Stanley Cup. They didn't trade the player, which meant they made that player deal with his attacker and abuser for months. And again, they defaced the Stanley Cup by putting that coach's name on the Stanley Cup. They have since removed it, and I get that that's good. I'm glad that the NHL was willing to remove that name, as they should. It should have never been on there. He should have been fired immediately, and he should never be spoken of again, except for by the description of, as I will not say his name.
All right. So that's why you have a hatred of the Blackhawks. So, only because I'm curious there.
Yeah.
Which team do you hate more, the Astros or the Blackhawks?
That's a tough one. Honestly, I hate the Blackhawks more right now.
Okay. I would have thought that it may have been the Astros, since you're more of a baseball fan than a hockey fan.
I am. I do tend to be a bigger baseball fan, and I refuse to talk. But what they did was cheat to win, and that's bad. That is really bad, and I agree that it's more than just a trophy. Thank you, Commissioner. But I think the way it was handled is what makes people, and it makes me more angry about it. The way it was handled makes me more angry about it. And yet, with the Blackhawks, he seems to be doing all right. But in a world where we...
You didn't have to give a more detailed answer. I was just expecting a boom. Yeah, it's got to be one or the other team. But yeah, I mean, it's a little easier. Like the cheating thing will go away, but it's a lot harder to, almost like a tougher subject to talk about with the with the rape that
Yeah.
that happened within the coaching staff and the players.
And Kyle Beach has done amazing things, and he has continued to speak out. But my problem is that he A, did nothing wrong. B, brought it up to the authorities, and C, was written off. Kyle Beach deserves everything. That team needs to have something dealt with. Also, there's a reason why I'm okay with the fact that Coach Q is no longer coaching in the NHL. He knew. So, let's get past that. Let's move on. Rich, do you see what's coming up next?
I do, Mike. Is it a left turn?
It is. And after that?
Is it another left turn?
No, it might be a right turn because we're on the road course as we're heading to the NASCAR Corner. Presented, as always, by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois. Check them out on 5th Avenue for all your sports memorabilia needs in person or on their eBay store. Once again, that is Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated. So, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, in approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes, the Rolex 24 at Daytona will start. Rich and I will pick a team each, and we'll see how they do. Rich, will you watch this at all?
I don't think so. Maybe no, I'm not going to lie, but no, probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I actually watched quite a bit of. I have buddies that play iRacing, and I actually watched like 3 or 4 hours, maybe more. It was probably more. It might have been like 6 hours of them racing, but I probably won't watch any of this. Honestly, maybe a little bit. Like maybe if I'm playing video games down here while I'm doing stuff, I'll have it on my TV that's right over there. I'm not actually going to watch it. With that being said, Rich, who are you picking as the overall winner as a blind pick, maybe knowing one or two guys on the team?
Mike, I'm going to go with the number 60 car because I recognize two reasons, Mike. I recognize 2 of the 4 drivers on that team, Simon Pindergaard and Julio Chestaneves, and they're driving an Acura. And an Acura is just is a more expensive Honda, and I'm a Honda guy. So, I'm going to go with that team, number 60.
Okay.
The number 60 car.
The Acura number 60 car, I don't even know who it's sponsored by. I recognize those names. I am going to pick the number 7 car driven by Matt Campbell, Philippe Nasser, and Michael Christensen. I recognize actually all 3 of those names.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, next week we actually get to talk NASCAR as we'll have the clash at the Coliseum.
Yep.
And so Mike, do you want to maybe go with whoever car finishes higher in this race gets the driver pick for the clash?
Sure. We can do that.
Okay. Sorry, just thought about that.
Yep. And then after that, we're going to talk about what changes we've seen for the drivers and where they're at. And hopefully we can start talking about Fantasy NASCAR, as that is 1 week out from the Daytona 500. So look for that on the 11th. And then, Rich, on the 19th, what are we going to do?
Mike, we're going to fire up those engines, and we're going to go out to Daytona and actually start our weekly NASCAR coverage every single week on the show.
I mean, we have NASCAR coverage every week from now until the season starts, and it's gonna be fun. So, once again, Rich, what has this been?
Mike, this has been the NASCAR Corner, presented by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated. Check them out in Moline, Illinois, down on 5th Avenue, or on the web. Look for them on the eBay, and also in response to looking for or be on the lookout for the link to join our fantasy NASCAR group once NASCAR.com decides to open registration or allow leagues to renew themselves so that new people can join from week to week.
Okay, Rich, we have one quick hit, unless you have something else to bring up before we go into our quick hits.
I know.
Okay, our last quick hit. We apparently have to elect somebody into the Hall of Fame this year.
Well, there have been years where nobody's been voted in, and it's just been somebody that a Hall of Fame committee of players and current Hall of Famers have elected amongst themselves to join the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
But there was only one Baseball Writers of America Association voted into the Hall of Fame, and who gets the honor this year, Mike?
A man that you and I have spent years cheering against, Scott Rowland. I mean, back when we were younger and he was still playing, but
I think in the back of my mind, growing up, looking at his numbers from the back of the baseball card, or just
his WAR is amazing.
I think I played when I was doing fantasy baseball, starting to get into fantasy baseball. Scott Rowland was still around.
Yep.
And
his WAR is great, but
yeah,
when you look at the decades he played in, was he ever the superstar that a lot of the other guys were?
I don't think so. I don't even remember him being like the perennial all-star elected every single year at his position.
I agree. So,
but if you look at the entire story of his career, are the numbers good enough compared to his peers in the Hall of Fame at that position?
Yeah.
Are they amongst those numbers that could warrant him being a Hall of Famer?
I think
the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, you answer yes. I actually think it's more of a Hall of really good moment. But I think the writers wanted to show that if you were clean, we're going to give you that leg up, and that is probably, if you look here, forming thoughts in my head.
Okay, that's fine.
You ready for this? Let's go down this path. When he played was the dirty era, the steroids era of baseball, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many times did he pop?
None.
So, I'm wondering if you're a baseball writer and you're looking at all these guys that half, 3/4 of the league was on steroids, and now all of a sudden you have a guy who wasn't. Could it be that you are giving him more of a benefit of the doubt? Not just the benefit of the doubt, but you're saying if he was playing against guys that weren't juiced, he probably has better numbers and is probably an all-star his entire career? Because honestly, if I'm voting and I'm looking at it, I can totally see that. If I had a vote, Scott Rowland played with a bunch of guys that were juiced, and look at how good he was. Look at how high his WAR is. Look at how, by the way, if you're not familiar, WAR is wins against replacement. I know you know that, Rich. I'm saying to our fans that may not know. Look how good he was overall, and yet he was playing against guys who were fully juiced the entire time. That actually raises his profile so much more. I'm good with it. When we went into this story, I was not. I thought he didn't deserve it. But the more we talk about it, the more I think that he's playing against pitchers who are on steroids. He's playing against, in his same position, competing for all-star appearances with guys that are juiced. Looking at guys in his own team that are juiced. I'm okay with it. I'm 100% okay with it. This guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
All right, so Mike, typically a Hall of Famer puts on the cap. Either he gets to select the team cap that he wears on his Hall of Fame plaque, or the Hall of Fame tells him which cap they're going to put him in. So he predominantly played for the Philadelphia Phillies and the St. Louis Cardinals. He played a couple of years out in Cincinnati, and I think he ended his year up in Toronto.
Yeah.
So if you're Scott Rowland, do you wear the team where you won, I think, like a Rookie of the Year candidate, a Rookie of the Year award, and had some great years with the Phillies, or do you put the cap on of the Cardinals, who you won a World Series title with?
I think personally, I'm skewed. I know that I'm skewed because I look at Scott Rowland and I see him as a St. Louis Cardinal for all the games that I saw him playing against us at. For me, I'm skewed for that.
For me, I think of Scott. When I hear Scott Rowland, I think Philadelphia Phillies, not St. Louis Cardinals.
And I agree, but I think winning the World Series is probably, if you're looking at a vote, I think that winning that World Series is what puts him over the top. I'm going to say Philadelphia, or I'm going to say St. Louis Cardinals.
All right, so just missing this year's cut to get into the Hall of Fame was Todd Helton, Mr. Rockies, as he got 72% of the vote, as well as other guys that got kind of close for Billy Wagner of the Mets and Astros, and former River Bandit, and Andrew Jones of the Braves got 58%, and Gary Sheffield got 55%, and he could be coming off the ballot pretty soon, as you get at least 50% to stay on the ballot if it's your first time.
Yeah.
And Carlos Beltran, guy heavily named in that cheating scandal, is at 40%.
Yep.
I think he stays on the ballot because of how many years he's going to get to stay on the ballot.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I just remembering back to Beltran. I think that Andrew Jones, Todd Helton, and Billy Wagner deserve to be Hall of Famers. Probably not anywhere close to first ballot Hall of Famers.
Oh,
but
yeah.
for me, I don't know if Carlos Beltran is a Hall of Famer, not just because of the cheating scandal, but just looking at the entire scope of his career. I don't think that's Hall of Fame numbers for him.
Yeah. Okay. Rich, any shout-outs before we finish out the show today?
Yeah, I got to say a happy birthday to my brother-in-law, Josh. So we were supposed to be down in St. Louis today, spending some family time doing stuff, but he had some, due to the weather in southern Illinois and the St. Louis area, and due to some health things, we decided to call it off.
Okay.
And but still, it's still his birthday, so happy birthday. Hopefully we'll get a chance to celebrate with you here soon. Mike, do you have any shout-outs this week?
I do not.
Do not. Did we get any show reactions or comments on the Facebook line?
We did not.
All right. So as always, folks, if you're watching the live Facebook feed and you give us a reaction, no matter what the reaction is, more than likely Mike will share it. Mike will share it, and especially a comment. So you'll get a shout out at the end of the show, or if Mike sees it and it's related to the topic we're talking about, we'll pause the show and tell you what, and let your comment kind of chime in and add to our discussion. So as always, make sure to like the episode, comment on the episode as we're recording. You'll get a shout out. But Mike, they're watching us here on the Facebook feed, and they want to take us on the road and just listen to us. What avenue can they find us at?
Anywhere where you find your podcast.
What's their best option to do that?
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, I believe. I haven't looked there. I should look there. I should probably look there. Let me give me a second. Anywhere, any of the major platforms where you find podcasts, you can find us there. Rich, they're listening to us, but they want to see our pretty face. and they hate Mark Zuckerberg, so they won't give him any money by joining Facebook. What should they do?
They'll go ahead and find us on YouTube as Mike posts the episodes of what we're seeing here on Facebook with the Facebook feed to YouTube as well. Wherever you listen to us, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to be able to get updates on maybe programming, recording schedules, or sorry, I lost my train of thought. Or poll questions, make sure to hop over to Facebook and join either Balls and Sticks the podcast or fans of Balls and Sticks the podcast. So you can get show alerts and poll question notifications on when those go live.
I don't see us on. I don't see it on Amazon. I'll see if I can get that fixed. So look for that in the future. But with all that being said, Rich, let's roll the outro.
Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa, this is Balls and Sticks the podcast with your hosts, Mike and Rich.